what I'm going to be talking about today is how to train for your sport. And this is going to be directed towards your guys' group of people as recreational athletes, right? So how many people in this room are in like some sort of exercise related major? Anybody? It's like 2 people, 3 people, right? So that's not how I designed this, so that it works out great. So I could go through and talk about strength and conditioning and muscle fibers and oxidative stuff and all these details, but you guys frankly don't need to know any of that stuff. So we're going to keep it to what can you guys use practically when you leave here to get better at your club sports, okay? So a little bit just briefly about myself. I'm the assistant director of fitness here for Campus Recreation, so I'm in charge of all of our fitness programs. I've done strength and conditioning work in the past, worked with different athletes. So I have a background that's kind of a mix of working with recreational people like you guys and then working with athletes in a lot of different settings. So can somebody over there just shut that door? Thank you. You kind of have to really, thanks. So I have my master's degree in exercise physiology. I do a lot with our programs here. So any questions that you guys have as I'm going through this, feel free to throw up your hand and ask. You know, I left enough time for us to have questions. I tried to really make this practical, interesting information through some videos in there. So I think this will be really beneficial for all you guys, that you'll have good things when you leave here. And at the end, you can ask more questions. And if anyone would like me to send them the PDF of this presentation, let me know and I can do that too, okay? So to kick off, we're going to talk about the whole context of this presentation is going to be training versus working out, right? So it's all, you know, it might be like, okay, well, it's the same thing, right? But when we talk about the context of getting you better at your sport, we're talking about training towards a specific goal. So a lot of people in recreation that will come in and use our facility here are just coming in to exercise, coming in to work out. They don't really have like a plan. It's just, you know, it's you know, Wednesday at this time, you know, I feel like I should probably go in and work out and just kind of do some things, and maybe they don't really know what they're going to do when they come in here. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're getting ready for a sport, you want to be training with a specific goal in mind. That can be a lot of different goals that we'll talk about here in a minute, but you want to be working towards a set goal. So you want to treat when you come into the gym, even if it's only once or twice a week, you want to have a goal that you're working towards, whether that's over the course of the semester, whether that's before your club season starts, whatever that is. So we want to think about everything we talk about in the context of this presentation as training versus just kind of going in and just kind of doing whatever. So when you determine your goals as a recreational athlete, some special considerations unique to you guys versus if I did this presentation to a bunch of strength coaches for Division I athletes, it's going to be totally different, right? Because you guys have different priorities than a Division I athlete that's on scholarship, getting like a meal plan for free. You know, it's like their whole life revolves around their sport, right? I mean, most people in this room, you're passionate about your club sport, you're really involved with it, but it's not the entire thing that your life revolves around, right? So your priorities are a little different as a recreational athlete, your time's a little different, you have a lot more going on that you have to manage your time. Then you don't have, you know, a set practice at 6 a.m., a set practice at 2 p.m., and then coaches meetings at 5 and all that stuff. You guys are also in charge of your own time, so pretty much as good as you want to be at your club sport is the time you invest in it and your club, right? So it's not going to be a case of where anyone's going to be making you do anything, unless your clubs make you do stuff, but that's going to be different from club to club. So that goes along with commitment, accountability, and then diversity of goals. So you being good at your club sport that you compete in is not your #1 priority in life. You're probably going to have some other goals aside from that. Training for you might be, yeah, I want to get better at my club sport, but I also just want to look better. I want to feel healthier. It's going to be a little more diverse than just being, you know, if you're a running back for Ohio State, all your training is geared towards being a better running back at Ohio State. It's not towards looking better in the mirror. It's not towards any of that stuff. So you guys are going to have more diversity of goals. So when you look at your goals, most everybody's, your priorities may be a little different of each of these, but generally all of these are going to be part of what you're doing. So improving your general fitness, just getting quote unquote in better shape. Preventing injury, which is important for everybody, no matter how, even sometimes more for recreational athletes, because you go from times of the year where you may be doing not a whole lot to competing on a regular basis in your sport. Improving your sport performance, which is what this all centers around. And then addressing your secondary goals, looking better, things like that. Okay? So when you look at what your training is going to look like for you individually, it's going to be what are the needs of my sport and what are the needs of myself. And that's the two ways you're going to divide things up. So when you look at the evaluation of your sport, you look at these things up here: strength, power, muscle size, muscular endurance priorities, common injury risks, and you look at how do I need to train to fit the needs of my sport with those things. If you're, say, a rugby player, your needs are going to be different than somebody who's a cross-country runner, something like that. Muscle size is going to be different, endurance that you need is going to be different. So you have to look at what's going to be common with your sport. You look at common injury risks. Common injury risks for a baseball player or a softball player with shoulder injuries, with elbow injuries, are going to be a lot different than a volleyball player where the common injuries, knee injuries like ACL tears. So you want to look at the sport you play and you want to make sure you're addressing the needs of that for injuries. And then evaluation of yourself. So exercise history, health injury history. If you've had injuries in the past, you got to make sure you're training to supporting and preventing those happening again. And then physical testing. So you have general fitness assessments like your body fat percentage, things like that. We do those things here. And then you also have a little more advanced things like a movement analysis, a strength analysis, taking a bar over your head, seeing can you do an overhead squat without your movement breaking down. What's your best squat that you can do. Just walking, how do you look walking? Do you have movement dysfunction in how you're walking? Really good people at evaluating athletes can see somebody walk and right away be able to tell if their glutes work or if their back is always hurting, stuff like that. So those are things that if you want to look more into figuring out how you yourself are as an athlete and what your needs are, those are things you can look into. So what does training consist of? You have general physical preparedness and specific physical preparation. So general physical preparedness is what we're going to be talking the majority about. It's going to be getting basically in better shape, stronger, faster, quicker, having better endurance, just being in a better position to be good at your sport. Specific physical preparation is doing the actual activities that are part of your sport. So if you look at your club sport practices, that's what your practices are, specific physical preparation. You may do different practices and different coaches are different. You guys, however you run your practices may be different. Some people do a ton of conditioning in practice. That's not necessarily specific if you're just doing gassers back and forth. But if you're on a basketball team and you're doing free throw practice, stuff like that, that's specific training. So you can tie your specific physical training into your general physical preparation, but you have to make sure you do it the right way. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But what we're going to focus on is your general physical preparedness. The best way to think about general physical preparedness and how it relates to the specific stuff is like a pyramid. So your specific physical preparation, all your very specific skills to your sport is at the top of the pyramid. It's a very small but specific area of I need to be better at doing these set skills in my sport. I need to be better at place kicking. I need to be better at this. All the things you need. I need to be better at setting in volleyball. Whatever you need to be better at, those are up here. But in order to be able to do these things to the best of your ability, you have to have the foundation of the general physical preparedness. That's why athletes who only go to their sport practice don't end up being as good as if you did some training on your own to help prepare you and lay a physical base. You have to have the tools, which we're going to talk about here, to be able to support the stuff you do to practice to be better at your sport. So when we talk about what training consists of, we have flexibility, mobility, being able to move in all the ranges of motion you need to, and we'll talk about the difference between those two in a minute. Plyometric training, you need to be explosive, and these are all going to apply to every sport. Now, when we talk about what sport you play, the role that each of those is going to play is going to be a little different. A swimmer is not going to be the same as a rugby player, a football player, basketball player. It's all going to be a little different, but at some point you need all of this stuff to be a good athlete. So you need to be able to move, you need to be able to be explosive, you need to be able to be fast and in shape to be able to support being fast, and you need to be able to be strong. And again, the level of all of those that you need will change a little bit depending on what sport you actually play. So when I show a picture of the toolbox here, this is everything that's in your toolbox, or at least the categories. And the goal of this presentation is to give you the tools and the toolbox the way you can leave here and you know what you have to choose from to be better at your sport. All right, so when we talk about taking all these things from the toolbox and putting them together, in order for any of these things to work, whether it's strength training, whether it's your agility, your speed stuff, flexibility, these things are going to be important. So you have specificity, or you may refer to it, if you're in exercise science classes, as the SAID principle. Basically training a certain way for a certain outcome. So how you train, you need to pick a way to train that's going to result in a certain outcome. You can't just do anything. You can't just walk in the gym and do anything and assume it's going to make you better at one specific thing. You know, you can't go in and just say, go in the squat rack and squat a whole bunch of times and assume it's going to make you, immediately faster. So there's a link to those, but you have some specificity of realizing certain exercises carry to certain things. Overload, which is training with the greater intensity that you're used to. So at some point you have to push yourself, and that's where this training concept comes to mind. Of you have to know where you're at so you can know how you can exceed that. If all you did was do the same thing all the time, you're not going to get better. Doesn't mean killing yourself, but you do have to overload at some point. And progression. A quote that I don't remember which strength coach said it, but to get stronger, you have to add weight to the bar at some point. So you can't just say you squat 100 pounds, you can't just squat 100 pounds every day for the next 20 years and assume you're going to get stronger. At some point, you have to add weight to the bar, right? Or do more reps or more sets. But that's the idea. And this picture here is basically this old myth that kind of summarizes all of this. It's basically that this guy had this baby calf that he carried up this hill every day, and then as the calf got older and bigger and started weighing more, the guy also got in better shape, got stronger, because every day the calf weighed a little bit more every time he carried him. So that's kind of just an analogy that you can use with all this training stuff. Is it doesn't need to be huge jumps in how difficult something is, but at some point you have to make it more difficult to make progress. All right, so for warm-up, flexibility, and mobility methods, with your warm-up, we'll talk about a couple of different parts of this. For your warm-up, anytime you prepare for a practice, for training outside of practice, for your actual athletic event, you want your warm-up to be simple and effective, and that's going to mean it's going to prepare you for your activity, prevent injury, and a couple ways that it does that is you want your warm-up to be dynamic. A lot of times you want it to include some explosive components to get you ready to be fast in your sport. You don't want to go from just walking on the treadmill really slow to immediately trying to run and sprint on the football field. Not only is that an injury waiting to happen, but you're not really primed up to do that. So we want to get everything in your nervous system primed to be fast, to all the characteristics that you have in your sport that you want to be good at. Your warm-up needs to help prepare you to do that. So we do general then targeted, which means you'll probably have a couple things that everyone will need to do to warm up, no matter what sport you play, just to get moving and get your blood flowing, things like that. And then you may have a couple specific things that you're like, I have an injury that I know I need to spend a little extra time on my shoulder, or a little extra time on my hip, or whatever. I get shin splints, I need to do this. So you have your general things, and you pick a couple things that are a priority for you. And that kind of goes in with the preventing injury and addressing specific needs. This is a really good general warm-up for just if you want something simple, because that's one thing that as more educational things have been online with helping people get ready to warm up, it can turn into this huge mess where you have 1,000 things to do and you're not sure what exactly you want to choose to do. And I'm sure you've seen people in the gym that it's like 45 minutes of just warming up, and it's like not all of us have time to spend 3 hours in the gym just getting ready to get to train. So is this perfect for everybody? No, but this is a very good one by Joe DeFranco, who owns a private facility in New Jersey where he created this warm-up. It's called the Agile 8. It's 8 movements. Doesn't take long. It hits all the general stuff, and then you can hit some specific things if you need to. You basically do some soft tissue release. So you foam roll your IT band, foam roll your adductor, adductors on both sides and IT bands. And then you go ahead and release your glute with your lacrosse ball or something similar, or softball. You do some dynamic movements, so you do rollovers into V-sits, fire hydrant circles, mountain climbers, a couple things like that. I have some videos of this too, so if anyone wants, if anyone wants me to send them this presentation, I can also send you some of the videos of how to do these things. But this is a very quick easy warm-up that you can do that'll help prepare you for whatever you're going to be doing for your training or your sport. So now when we move into plyometrics methods, the terminology we're using for all these coming from the National Strength and Conditioning Association, so that's kind of where all these categories are coming from. But for plyometrics, these are dynamic or explosive exercises that you use to train to produce the most force in the shortest amount of time. Something that's good to remember that gets easily confused is these are not conditioning drills. So they get used as conditioning drills a lot, but when you talk about how, if you want them to serve their exact purpose, you can do things as conditioning that are plyometrics, but you want this to be serving the purpose of making you more explosive. So if you're doing, say, a medicine ball throw, whether it's a chest pass forward with a jump, whether it's a throw up towards the ceiling, if you're doing a box jump, you wouldn't want to do like however many you can do in 10 minutes or something and just do them until you're fatigued. At a certain point when you're fatigued, you're not going to be developing that explosiveness anymore. So you want them to be broken up a little bit, and you want them to serve their exact purpose. Now if you want to do, and we'll talk about the order of the exercises as well, but if you want to use these towards the end of the workout too as like a finisher, or like similar to how a lot of CrossFit workouts will go and things like that, you can too. But if you're using them to build explosiveness, you have to do them for that reason very specifically. You also have Olympic weightlifting movements that you can use for explosiveness. There's the snatch, the clean, the actual Olympic weightlifting movements, and then there's some variations like high pulls. You can do the Olympic lifts off of standing boxes or blocks. The ProZar builds great explosiveness and it teaches you hip extension. So if you're in a sport where you need to be able to explode up and you need your hips and knees and everything to extend at the same time, Olympic lifting really good at basically making you have to do that, because if you don't do it correctly, you're not going to get underneath the bar. The cons are you have to learn how to do it right. So I'm sure also, as you could see out for people who've been in the weight room here, there's a huge variation of people doing Olympic weightlifting. Some people are really good at it, some people not so much. You're not going to get the full benefit out of it if you're not doing it right. The key is you can use these, but my personal recommendation for people typically is make sure you know how to do it right if you're going to include it. Otherwise, medicine balls, throws, box jumps, they all do the same thing. So you can use these as a tool, make sure you're using them correctly. So with learning the right movements, some more of the benefits of these plyometrics are you use the opportunity to learn how to jump and land correctly. So you're not only just box jumping to just get better at jumping and being able to jump high, you're also working on how you jump, how you land. You utilize the nervous system for the rest of the training. So you can do box jumps before you go squat or deadlift or do lunges, and it'll make you more explosive for those movements. It'll help your nervous system kind of wake up before you go do that. And simple is the way to go. This doesn't have to be complicated. I'll show you some example workouts towards the end here, but it doesn't need to be real complicated. It can be really simple. An example progression you can begin with if you've never done these before your training, you want to implement them. Figure out what your max box jump is, or at least approximately, without destroying yourself on the box. Week 2, do 3 sets of 3 with about 3/4 of that height. Week 3, do 4 sets of 3 instead of 3. Week 4, add 1 more set, do 5 sets of 3. Find some way to progress from what you started with. Then you can retest, do the whole thing over again. You can do it differently with sets and reps, but that's usually a good way to do things is in 3 or 4 week kind of waves like that. So these are some important things to consider with plyometric training. Okay, so here is an example of a correct way to do, there we go. All right, so this is an example of how to correctly do a box jump. This guy's kind of sandbagging a little bit. It's a little low for him, but you can see how he's using a box to step down off of the box. The reason you do that is because if you jump Does anyone know why it's not a good idea to jump up on a super high box and then just jump right back down? Does anyone know?
You hurt yourself.
You hurt yourself. Does anyone know what the specific injury is that happens a lot? It's your Achilles tendon. There's a lot of people who have torn their Achilles tendon from jumping up on a box and then jumping back down, because there's a certain training method that you can use for depth jumps where you jump off of a box and you purposely jump off of something, but that's something you have to start really low with and then train your way up. So if you've never done that before to prepare your body for that shock absorption, and then you just jump up on a super high box and jump back down, that's where you're at risk for injury, because your Achilles tendon, your calves, everything are not prepared for that. So there's some people who can pull it off. You know, if you're doing some sort of competition where they're trying to do box jump super fast, you may see people do that. You know, that's their decision to do that. But for most people, you benefit from doing the jump and then stepping down off the box. Okay. Okay, so the don'ts of plyometrics are going to be turning the drills into conditioning. Again, because not only is that not going to make you more explosive, but you're going to have to, if you do use things like plyometrics for conditioning, you need to downgrade the intensity that you're doing by a lot, or else that's all going to happen. As you get more tired, it's harder to do things explosively, do them correctly. You'd be jumping and landing improperly. If you, in general, if you jump or land, or you see somebody jump and land and their knees are coming in, that means an ACL tear may be in their near future. So you need people that when they jump or land, knees need to stay out, hips need to be back, they need to do it correctly. So if you're fatiguing as you're doing box jumps and all of a sudden every time you land on the box your knees look like they're gonna knock together, that's when you stop. And you either work on doing it correctly at a lower box or something like that. You can't just keep doing it. And then jumping back off the box in terms of injury risk. So I've put a couple of these videos in here too of examples of things I don't think are a good idea. So don't stack aerobic step boxes up to do box jumps, because then that'll happen. And then one more example. I don't know why there's so many people who think it's a good idea to use aerobic step boxes to do box jumps on, but it's just not a good idea. So not only is it a bad surface to jump on, the other thing you want to consider when you do box jumps is there's a ton of people who love testing how high they can jump, to whether it's to show off a video or something like that. If you're landing at a point where your hips are below your knee, it's too high of a box. Even if you can get up there, when we would work with athletes, we always told athletes, if you're going to choose to jump on that height of a box, you need to be able to jump, land, and you need to be able to stand up at the end. So if they can't pull that off and they have to jump off really fast or have something like that happens, we lower the box. And you don't have to jump to a maximal height box to get more explosive and better at jumping, because anytime you jump on a box that's near your max height, your body's going to automatically, your body's not going to say, what's the lowest I can jump to get on this box? If it's a decent height, you're going to get up there, you're going to build that explosiveness. All right, so we talked about flexibility and your warm-up. For speed, agility, and speed endurance, we talk about the difference between these couple, right? You'd think speed is speed, it's all the same, right? But speed in and of itself is the skills and abilities needed to achieve high movement velocities. So just moving strictly as fast as possible from point A to point B in a short distance. Your agility are your skills and abilities needed to explosively change movement velocities or modes, which is basically changing direction. So speed is running from here to the door right here for me. Agility is, can I stop on a dime right there and then run up the middle of the chairs? So it's changing direction. And then speed endurance is being able to move fast for an entire game. So are you able to make that sprint from here to the door over and over and over again over the course of the game? Or do you do it twice and you're gassed and you have to get taken out of the game? So it's important to build all these areas as you develop yourself as an athlete. So in order to train speed, what will make you faster? There's a lot of misconceptions, especially when it comes to speed and agility training, on what makes you faster. There's a lot of gimmicks out there in general for sports training. and I can talk a little bit about those at the end here, but there's just a ton of stuff that they're just trying to sell you to make you faster or make you, more agile or whatever, but it's pretty simple how you get faster. You're gonna have to sprint at some point. You actually have to do the thing that you're trying to get better at. So sprints from 10 to 20 yards, hill sprints. You want to rest between your sprints if you're working on speed. If you're working on conditioning, you can do suicides, you can do things like that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you're trying to work on actually getting faster, you want to rest in between your sprints so that way you're fresh and you're able to put 100% into it. Hill sprints are also good because it'll force you to use the right mechanics running up a hill. Because if you know anything about how to sprint, you want to have a 45-degree angle for your shin. You want to have your chest forward. And sometimes that can take getting used to if you're not used to do it on how to sprint like that. But if you're running up a hill, kind of the way gravity in the hill works, it kind of forces you to have to do it. So a good way to work on how to sprint is going to be running up hills. And it's really tough. So sprint, 10 to 20 yards, hill sprints. You want to rest between your sprints. We'll give some examples of how you can do that. Improve your posture. If you have bad posture, you're going to be a slow person. Both throughout the day, you want to be able to build yourself up to where you can have good posture with your shoulders retracted. You want to have yourself constantly folded forward like this, or if all you've ever done is train your chest and your biceps and you're really tight like this, you're going to be a slow person. And then while sprinting, those couple things I talked about. Also, if you get stronger, it will make you faster. Now, that's not the only thing you need to still do these things. But if you get stronger, for most people, it's going to make you faster because you can apply more force into the ground. That's something that sometimes people forget is if you want to be a faster person, you need to be able to push into the ground harder. So if you're super weak and you have no strength of your lower body and all you're doing is these speed drills, you're not going to get that much faster. You're going to have a ceiling on it. And also improve your body composition and your relative strength. A lot of strength coaches will talk about a good indicator for them of how fast one of their athletes is they'll see how many pull-ups they can do. Now, and if they can get better, if say they can only do 1 or 2 pull-ups with their body weight, if they can get them to doing 10 pull-ups, they're generally going to be faster. Now, is that because pull-ups makes you faster? No. It's because if you can do more pull-ups, you're stronger for your body weight. If you can't do a lot of pull-ups and you're not strong for your body weight, that's something to work towards, because if you don't have that good relative strength, you're not going to also be fast and explosive either. So something to keep in mind. So we talked about what will make you faster. Here's an example of one of these speed drills. There's a lot of variations you can do. Is a mountain climber into a sprint. So this strength coach will have everyone get down in this 3-point stance. And this is where you can make these customizations for your sport. So if your sport requires someone to be in a certain position, you can get them in that position, and then he'll tell them to go. And that's a good thing about speed drills is you can't hear the sound on here, but he'll essentially have them do the reps, and then he'll just randomly say when to go. So they have to work on mentally getting good at being able to jump into that sprint from that position. And if your sport requires you to start from a different position, you can get good at that too. A lot of soccer players will do sprints from a line position, things like that. So picking points that if you know, like in your sport, you end up on the ground a lot of time in your sport, it's a good idea to go ahead and do sprints from that position. Get used to getting up and going very quickly. And then when we talk about training agility, this is probably the one where there's the most gimmicks out there. So in order to make yourself more agile and to be able to change direction better, you need to improve your speed. If you're slow, it's going to be hard to be agile if you're slow. So all those things on the previous slide, you're going to want to get better at those. And then you want to think multi-directional change you with being able to get better at the agility. And speed ladders can be an example of that. The pros and cons of a speed ladder are, the pros of it are they can make a good warm-up. So if you want to use it, a lot of the athletes we would have for high school athletes, we would use the speed ladder as part of their warm-up to kind of get them rolling, get their practice some coordination, especially if they're younger athletes. The cons are you can get really good at the speed ladder and not be that good of an athlete. So you can just get good at practicing the speed ladder without actually getting faster. And when we talk about, and I'll show you a video in a minute, you can get quick feet without actually getting better agility. So anything that you do when it comes to speed and agility drills, it has to carry over to the field or the court or whatever you're doing. If you're just really good at the speed ladder, but you suck at rugby, it's not gonna help you with rugby. So you always have to keep in mind, there's a lot of things that you can do way too much of. You want to use it for its purpose to help you better at your sport. So there's a time and a place for most of these things. And just like with speed drills, perform for short duration with rest periods. So we talked about what will make you more agile. A lot of these will be practicing certain cone drills because you want to get better at changing direction. So you look at this drill here. He has a lot of these are tests too, so they're helping people be able to get better at these certain tests that they're going to be doing at the NFL Combine or things like that. Another drill that we would do with people a lot is get people to be able to react quicker for agility. So we'd have a cone in the middle, cones to the sides, and I'd have both hands behind my back, and one hand would have a tennis ball in them, the other one wouldn't. And they would run up to the middle cone, and then I would put my hands out and drop one of the balls, and whichever the side the ball dropped from, that's the direction they have to run. So that's teaching people on how to react quickly to what you see on, in their case, the field, versus just, if all you ever did was a 3-cone drill, you could get really good at the 3-cone drill. You can get really good at anything, but you want to be able to get good at reacting to things, whether it's on the court, the field, whatever your environment is. So what will not make you more agile? So there's a lot of videos like this that go around with people who have super fast, quick feet. So this is Andrew Hawkins. He used to be on the Browns, and then we got rid of him. But I don't know what team he's on now, but he's a super fast dude. But I think what people mistake is they see, like in this example, this video, you can see his feet are crazy fast. And it's a byproduct of that he's a super fast guy. He's been fast for years. That's why he's in the NFL. And that's why he's like 5'7" and can still play in the NFL. He's so fast. But the problem is people see him doing this and figure, oh, if I want to be as fast as Andrew Hawkins, I just need to do this. And the problem with this is what I talked about before is, let me skip forward in this a little bit. So he's really quick at doing these drills, and it's really impressive because he's moving really fast. But in reality, if all you ever did was do these drills where you're just like moving your feet super fast, you're not necessarily it's not gonna make for being the best football player. Because can anyone tell me, like with what he's doing right there, if all you ever did was work on getting good at that, can you tell me what the issue is with that? You're basically getting good at going, yeah, you're just getting good at going nowhere fast. So you have to remember that whatever you do has to translate to the field. So if like, there was some video, I tried to find the YouTube video of it, but they basically made fun of like these type of things, that they had somebody like doing that and some guy just came and like laid them out. So it has to carry over to the field. Now, if you're super uncoordinated, getting better at the speed ladder is gonna help you. And using it in certain circumstances can be good. But if you're just really good at just moving your feet really fast but not actually going anywhere, you're gonna get used to the habits of not putting that entire force into the ground when you change direction. So that's just something to keep in mind when you see things like this. And then lastly, in our speed, agility, and endurance is going to be what's going to get you in better shape to be fast. So in order to be fast and agile, you have to be in good shape. So you just improve your base conditioning. You have to start somewhere. So if you're currently not doing any sort of like cardiovascular exercise, or if you're out of season for your club sport, you want to be better at your sport when you get into your season and not be like ready to throw up or use your inhaler every 2 seconds. Like biking or walking, anything is better than nothing. So it doesn't have to be some crazy conditioning routine to get you in better shape. Something's better than nothing. Tempo runs are basically like a longer version of like a wind sprint. So you could do, say, a couple laps of running around the track at a pretty quick speed, walk a lap. A couple laps running, walk a lap. Things like that kind of replicate what you do on the field. Because as you know, most sports are not a constant run the entire game, right? So all you soccer players, it's like sprint, walk, it's very broken up. So you want to practice your body be able to fuel some of those things. You have prowler or sled pushes, light, so pushing for distances to get you in better shape, those really suck. Sled drags, light, where you then would just pull the weight behind you. We've got one of these prowlers here that we put in one of our spaces for we do a speed course class now for group fitness, and so they use that prowler. So if you ever want to try it, it's not easy. It's way harder than you think it would be. You have things like sandbag carries, battling ropes. We have that speed course class if you look on the group fitness schedule. At the end of the day, it doesn't need to be anything crazy. It's something you can do consistently. So pick something fun that you're actually going to stick with. Doing something is better than nothing. So if you give yourself some crazy conditioning thing to do, if you like doing, different, whatever you like doing, as long as it's getting you in better shape, that's going to be what's better than nothing, or something you'll quit at. And then lastly is resistance training methods. So in general, I'm going to stay pretty broad with this. We can obviously go super in depth with all these things. For your purposes, the best thing you can do is build strength using complex multi-joint movements that can be performed safely. So basically, instead of doing a seated machine overhead press or shoulder press on the machine, do a barbell overhead press, things like that. If you can do multi-joint movements that use a barbell, that's going to make you stronger throughout your entire body versus isolating. And the key is perform safely. So kind of like Olympic lifting. If you don't know how to do it correctly, we have plenty of ways here that we're working on teaching people how to do them correctly, but if you don't know how to do a certain movement correctly, pick something you know how to do safely. And then followed by smaller single joint and fixed movements to establish balance and prevent injury and build weaknesses. So if you start off doing a squat and the squat's heavier, after the squat you would go lighter and do some of these split squats or things like that to work on some of the smaller muscles that stabilize you, and work on some of the other goals for resistance training. Anytime you break up how you do any of this stuff, you can use this FIT principle to kind of mark down how you're doing it. So any exercise you choose or any type of training is going to be categorized like this: frequency of how often you train, intensity of how hard you train, time, how long you train, and type, what kind of exercises you use. So anything you choose is going to be based off of that. For the multi-joint movements in general, and there's exceptions to all these rules, is if you do lower reps, it's going to be strength and power that you're going to be building. If you do higher reps, it's going to be hypertrophy, which is building muscle, and then muscular endurance, which is being able to do a lot of reps for a long time. In general, that's going to be the rep ranges that build both of those things. There's obviously, or what you should be doing to build those. Obviously there's exceptions, but in general that's something to consider. So rather than go through all these super crazy details of different training programs, these are a couple recognized effective training programs for strength that I think will benefit most people, and they're designed in a way that you can build in all these other things that I've been talking about. So this is probably the top one I recommend to people on a regular basis, is this 5-through-1 program by Jim Wendler. He was Kentucky's strength coach for a while. He was a powerlifter, did all these things, and he created all these different books to help with training programs for how to basically just get in better shape in the context of everything we're talking about. He's written one for football players. He wrote a general one. It's a very good program. I highly recommend. If you just Google it, or I can send you information on it. It's a really good program, and he incorporates jumps, throws, all those different things. You also have some other programs here like starting strength and strong lifts. There's a million different programs you can do, but if you are not currently doing a program, this is a good one, any of these, to get you started in training consistently. So for putting all this stuff that we talked about together, an effective training program is going to include all of those things with enough balance to ensure performance and prevent injury. Like I said before, it's not going to be that you have to do, you can only do so much of everything. So you're not going to be doing everything every day 100%. You're going to be picking and choosing. If it's more important for you to be stronger, you're going to be focusing on the strength stuff. If it's more important for you to be fast, you're going to be focusing on the speed stuff. But you don't want to totally neglect any of those. I compete in powerlifting. I really don't need to be very fast. I still do things that help build my speed and jumping ability. I still do box jumps, med ball throws, but I just don't do them a ton. I do them a little bit. So you don't want to be in bad shape no matter what sport you play. But keep in mind, you always have to have some level of all of these. It's just the level of them is going to change depending on what your needs are, like we talked about before. So this is an example, this is just one of a million examples I could use of how you could tie all this together. So say you wanted to train 3 days a week, and you're like, realistically, I could get in the gym 3 days a week. I can't get in more than 3 days a week. You could include all the things we talked about in this way. So you could do your warm-ups every day of the week. The green is going to be those plyometrics. So you could do your box jumps one day, medicine balls on your upper body day, broad jumps on your other lower body day. You do your speed stuff in purple, so you can do some get up and go sprints on Monday. You can do your waterfall sprints on Wednesday. The black is strength stuff, so if you're using 5 through 1, this would be an example. You do squat one day, overhead press another day, deadlift another day, and then you have your assistance movements like glute ham raises, split squats, things like that. And then you have your conditioning at the end. So this is usually something good that you can kind of make a little tougher, a little easier, a little tougher. So maybe you start off with rower intervals that's really tough on one of the rowers out there. The next day you do a walk on the treadmill, it's easy. And then you do sled pushes that are really tough the last day. So you can include all this stuff, even not being in the gym that much throughout the week. And whatever program you end up choosing to start using or ways you incorporate this stuff, it's all doable. It's just how you do it. So that's just one example, and you can get rid of things, add things. And if you have questions about actually putting together your own program, you can feel free to email me about that too. So that's just one example. And the keys to all this being successful is going to be keeping it simple. So I know this is a lot of content that we covered. At the end of the day, if you don't understand it, it doesn't make sense, or you don't know why you're putting it in there, just don't do it. You know, as long as you look at those categories and you're including something in there, at the end of the day, if you look at it as I'm doing a little bit of stretching or mobility, I'm doing some jumping, doing some running, some throwing, and I'm lifting. Do those things in some way, shape, or form and do them consistently every week, and you're going to make progress. It does not need to be perfect. Doing a few things consistently is always better than doing a complicated program inconsistently. I made this mistake when I was younger, was picking this awesome, perfect masterpiece of a program that was going to make me a better athlete. And then you do it for a couple weeks super consistently because it's a 7-day-a-week, twice-a-day thing. And then all of a sudden you realize life does not allow you to do 7-day-a-week, twice-a-week training, and it all starts to fall apart. And all of a sudden you just quit because you're like, well, for the program to work, I have to do it that many days a week. You'd be better off picking a 2-day or 3-day-a-week training program that you know the whole semester you're going to do. So keep that in mind. Stick to the program. I think this is super important. When you're looking at training versus working out, stick to one program. Pick a semester and just do one program. You can make variations, but do generally the same program for a semester. Give it time to work. And then lastly, have fun. Pick a program you want to do. If you don't want to do, if you prefer to do broad jumps instead of box jumps, do that. If you prefer Olympic weightlifting to doing med ball throws, do that. Do what you want to do. At the end of the day, it's exercise, and you guys are in club sports. You're doing this because you want to do it. So do what is going to be fun for you, because you're going to stick to that versus doing something just because you should do it. And lastly, here are some resources for all you guys. So you can feel free to email me if you have any questions. My cards are at the front desk. That's also my email up there. You can get my email on our website, a ton of places. If you have questions or you'd like me to email you this PDF, this presentation, let me know. We also have certified personal trainers that I'm working with them on this type of thing and how to train in more details of the different parts of this. So that's something you can utilize here. For the women, we have this women's strength training program that we run every semester that's very helpful. We have our group fitness classes. We are looking at, in the future, offering sports performance and strength conditioning programs to your guys' club teams, that if you would like to do some form of strength and conditioning with me and some of my staff helping you, teaching you how to do some of these things, some of these drills, that we're going to make that available. Just, does that sound like something that might interest some of your guys' teams?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to talk a little more with Nick about it. but that's something we're looking at offering, is if you guys would like to utilize that, we can give you guys some, even if it's just running a speed camp or something like that. And then educational sessions like this one. Also, this website has a ton of really good strength and sport performance information on it. I write monthly articles for this website. They're all free. There's stuff on how to get faster, how to get stronger, mobility stuff. There's a lot of really good information. If you're looking at fact checking for nutrition supplement stuff, Examine is really good. There's a lot of really crappy information out there, so these are a couple places that are really good to go. And then some of those strength coaches I listed there are all people that Joe DeFranco is the one who did the Agile 8. Joe Ken's the head strength coach of the Carolina Panthers. Buddy Morris is the head strength coach of the Cardinals. Dan John's a private strength coach. They all have a ton of really good articles and information out there. So if you're interested, there's some really good people to reach out to. Anybody have any questions? I know that's a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions about anything specifically about their sport or training in general? Okay. If you do have any other follow-up questions, feel free to email me. Make sure that if you were in club sports and you did not, or you had like an issue sign up online or something, make sure that somebody from club sports has your name and gets it to Nick, so that way this counts for you, okay? If you have any other things you guys need in the future, let me know, but otherwise, I hope this was helpful for you. I may send you guys a follow-up email just to give an idea of, did you think this was helpful? Do you like stuff like this versus some of the other advancement things you guys have had and stuff like that? So, yeah, give me any feedback you have, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you.